Hey, hello everyone. It's nice to be with you again. I'm going to test the audio and the camera settings to see if you are able to, I'm sorry, to listen to me and to watch the video, right? I'm sorry, I'm trying to improvise and like
Sorry, to
start
listen to me.
working. I had to move to another house because in my house internet was not working. This has been like a big problem for me in the last days. I think it's because of the yeah, everyone's at home, so they're using a lot of internet connection for playing, for listening to music, and for entertainment. So maybe it's because of that. But yeah, anyways, I'm happy to be with you today, and we are going to start working with an interesting topic that has to do with teaching, right? We've been working with the different skills. We started last week actually to work with speaking and listening, which were like two similar skills, and they were like linked. They were considered to be the same thing, and we discussed why. We also mentioned important things about integrated skills lessons, in which the teachers have to understand the importance of teaching English through this concept of a communicative system in which all of the skills are part of an important process, right? So the skills are seen as elements of this process, and we have to understand that our students need all of those skills in order to be able to communicate in English or in any other language we're teaching. Again, I'm going to ask you please to forgive me. This is not like the um, conditions we should be working on. Like I always have like a special room with not kids, with yeah, everything's different. But then I have to ask for another place to work today, and my kids are actually playing like my nephew, and yeah, there are people behind me. I hope this doesn't make you feel distracted or anything. I'm going to wait for some people to join us today. There is just one person watching the video, and we're supposed to be more. So I'm going to take some more time to see if more people join. And I'm going to tell my kid to be quiet. Wait. All right. So today, as I told you, we're going to be working with teaching reading and teaching writing. It's going to be just an introduction, and I'm going to give you some important information for you guys to be able to work like individually. And in some readings, I'm going to upload on the classroom on Google Classroom. And hello, it's nice to see you here. Yes, so I'm going to give you instructions also to work, and I'm going to start sharing some material with you so you can read it, you can analyze this information, and later on we're going to have like a debate activity, right? We're going to try this activity on Saturday because I think it was Terry who asked me. She was so nice. Terry, you're so nice always. You told me to change tomorrow's class for Saturday, which I agree with. I think it's good because tomorrow's Teachers Day. So tomorrow we are going to have the chance to rest, to be able to relax, to be able to study, and see. All right. So I'm sorry. Yes, I was trying to get this thing work better. And I think I'm ready. All right, Aurea, sorry. I always say your name in the wrong way. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about that. Hi, Coco. Yes, I saw the name that said Denise Rivas, and it was like, I don't know who that person is. That's why I just say hello. But hi, Coco. It's nice to have you here. Imelda, hello. Yes. Sorry. The thing is that I have paused the video and the microphone. So I was, because I was talking to the kids who were here, I asked them to stop playing because they were using the internet, and then it went slow. But now it's better. Um, I hope you can hear me now, and I hope you can watch the screen correctly without any difficulties. And welcome again. I see now we're five. Let's give some like 2 more minutes to see if more people join. But yeah, so I was telling you about tomorrow's class that we're changing it for Saturday, and I think it's a good idea. So we have Teachers Day off, and yeah, so I think it's wonderful. I think it's a good idea. And well, yeah, I'm going to give you homework. I'm going to give you some assignments for you guys to study individually. And then we're having a debate. As I told you before, we're going to work through Zoom. I think, I'm not sure yet, but yeah, I'll let you know when the time is appropriate. So we're debating about how we should teach reading and how we should teach uh, mm, writing. So you need to read this information in order for you to know what the best thing to teach those two skills is now. And yes, I think it would be really interesting because it would be a different way to learn. Remember, we don't need like those specific definitions. You need like the general concept. There are some things that you really need to know because they will be asked. For example, they might ask you about what the four skills of the language are, the basic skills. So you will need to answer with those terms we know already: reading, speaking, writing, and listening. I hope I didn't repeat any of them. And yes, so you need to understand more like how the new trends for teaching work, and that's what we're doing actually. The last week we had this presentation about speaking and listening, and I think some of you were stressed and some of you were concerned about the big amount of information we had. So I wanted to ask you not to stress out about this, because that's not the purpose, right? You don't need so much information to be memorized. Like I mean, it's important for you to study, but of course the most important thing or the most important part of this is for you guys to understand how teachers of English should work and how teachers of English are required to do it under the new perspectives and under the new methodologies. So yeah, we will talk about that later on, and I hope it makes you feel better. But yeah, you're doing an excellent job, and I don't think we need to take some like longer to continue studying the same things. All right, so it's time to stop speaking a lot about anything, and it's time to start working on the topic for today. So we're not going to take longer than 30 minutes, I hope, I promise, because I want you to change this perspective of last week class in which we had a lot of information. So today I try to do it different. Remember, I am always trying to adapt to approach the way we're working in different ways, so all of you have the opportunity to understand and have the opportunity to feel better in terms of motivation. So I'm going to do this like quicker and more summarized in order for you guys not to feel worried about the information we're learning here. Hi Terry, thanks for joining us, and Sandra, hello. It's nice to see all of you here. All right, so let's get started with this. Teaching reading. Well, I would say that teaching reading is one of the most difficult things for most teachers, and I would say it is for me, especially because I don't like reading in academic purposes when teaching, right? Uh, I am a fan of all those things that have to do with school. I love school and I love studying, and I love reading too, especially when I do it for pleasure, like when I read some novels and when I read some tales. It's really cool, right? Because you have this time for you to relax. And remember, there are a lot of phrases people say about reading in which they say that when you read, you actually live different lives, that you have the opportunity to be or to become a different person each time you open a book. You visit a lot of different places when you open a book, because you can go from France to Italy, and actually you can move through time when reading. It's an amazing experience for most of us, like for most people. But when it comes to teaching, I think is one of the hardest things to do, right? Why? The first thing is that not all the people are used to read. I mean, this is a skill all the people need to develop. Nevertheless, we can say that the amount of reading common people need is not or cannot be compared with the amount of reading people who enjoy reading, who love reading, who love novels, who love culture. Right? It's not the same. I'm going to try to rephrase. Just give me a second because people are being noisy here. So just let me tell them to stop. I'm back. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's just that I get distracted easily, and I ask them to stop being noisy. But yeah, so I was telling you about this importance of identifying how different it is for all the people in terms of how much they need to know how to read. Right? All of us need the basic reading skills. Like we need to know how to read an instruction, probably how to read a WhatsApp message, right? But when it comes to analyze information, to decode the information you have in a message, in a book, in a novel, not all of us need the same skills because not all of us will use reading for the same thing. It happens the same with other skills. For example, when we talk about speaking, all of us need different skills for speaking, but it is more common to standardize the skills people need to communicate in an oral way, right? Because all of us go to the store, all of us have a social conversation with people like in the place where we work, but it's not the same with reading, right? All of us need to read, like need to know how to read certain things, but that's it. It depends on each person, like how much they need to know how to read or how to understand some stuff. Yeah, I will make my point clearer later on. So let's start with this. Teaching reading in research has gone through different stages, and like researchers have identified important aspects about reading and important things to take into account when you teach people how to read. Hello, Rosalba. It's nice to know you're here. Reading has been considered an important skill, but also a passive skill. And the cornerstone of reading for many years was the fight between bottom up processes and top down processes. What do we mean by this? For many years, researchers in the field of linguistics or in the field of teaching English as a second language we're having this argument about or whether it was more important to develop bottom up skills or bottom up strategies than doing it with top down skills. What does it mean? Well, bottom up refers to those like to these skills that have to do with identifying linguistic signals, linguistic data processing, and also like information about language. I will say it again. Bottom up reading referred to the importance of knowing grammar, of knowing linguistic elements, and of knowing like these sophisticated knowledge about language. Not anyone could read. It was just for people who had developed important skills in terms of the language commands, right? Just those people who understood what a noun was, what an adjective was, could read, right? Different to top-down things or top-down reading, which was more a knowledge, an experience to understand a text or to understand reading. They thought through top-down reading, people could learn to read or could know how to read if they were like experienced enough, and if they had knowledge about the culture and if they had knowledge about the topic the reading was about. I hope I'm making my point clear up to here. If I'm not, please just write a message and I will try to re-explain what I told you. Hi, Andrea. It's nice you are here. And Raquel, yes, hi. So I hope everything's good so far. All right. So, anyways, I'm going to be like checking the chat in case you have questions, and I will try to answer your questions. Okay. So, for many years, this was the important thing. They wanted to discover or they wanted to find out which was most important, like more important, bottom up skills, like knowing things about the language in order to be able to understand a reading text, or the culture and intelligence to understand what the text was about, right? Which are two different processes, actually. The thing is that nowadays we understand reading as the combination of those two things. It is important for us to know grammar and for us to know the language rules in order to be able to decode the messages, in order for us to be able to understand the words we have there and how they work together in order to give a message, right? On the other hand, we also need intelligence, not just to understand the text in the language basis, but also to understand the purpose of it, the intended message that is behind the words. And we need also knowledge of culture. For example, if we're reading something about the Second World War, we need obviously to understand the code itself we're reading from. Like we need to understand each letter we see on the book, but we also need the cultural background of this important event in human history. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to understand, right? I could be reading, for example, a text about astronauts and how their rockets work in the space, but I might not be able to understand this text because I'm not related to this topic. So it's very complicated. That's the mixture between bottom up and top down reading skills, right? You need both, and that's something we need to understand so we can start from that concept. Bottom up and top down skills are required in modern teaching, so our students can understand or can have more successful reading skills. So we need different skills, as I told you, not just language and not just interpreting messages, but understanding this, we can say that all kind of reading represents a risk to students and to all kind of people who are trying to read. Why? Well, the thing is that when reading, Terry says that, yeah, let me read what she said. So all of you can see those important comments. It says, also, we need to understand certain words in their context exactly. And that has to do more with pragmatic things, right? Like a word here can mean this, but when it is being used in another context, it might have a very different meaning. That's true, Terry. And that would be more like a bottom up thing in terms of the use of the word, like the meaning of the word, the structure of the word, because if it ends in ly, it is an adverb, etc., etc. But it also has to do with top-down things, right? Because some words mean different things culturally. It depends on where you are, like the meaning this word will have. Okay, so in terms of reading, the risk all of us have is that we need to infer meanings, and we need to decide what we need to retain and what we don't need to retain in order to continue understanding the text, right? When we read, there are a lot of inferences we have to make. It's not the same as when we listen to something. When you listen to something, you might be able to ask the person who's telling you this information, like, what did you mean, or what do you mean by this, or what did you try to tell me, or, yeah, you can clarify some aspects. Not with reading. When we're reading something, there's no one we can ask about that information unless it is active reading, as we are seeing now on the WhatsApp conversations, right? Remember, things are changing a lot because the ways we communicate are changing also. So there is the need for more research about how those things work. All right. So we need also to be ready for this, and we also need to make our students ready to infer, to decide what information is important and what information is not. So the combination of all those two things, of those different categories of skills, the bottom up and the top down skills, is called interactive reading. And it's considered to be one of the most successful skills you can develop in your students, right? You will see why later on. There is also another important concept you need to know about this, which is called schema theory. And it refers to the aspect that when you're reading something, doesn't really carry meaning by itself, right? There's not like meaning, or like an only an absolute meaning to that text. There is the need to interpret, to infer, to understand, and to integrate it into each person in different ways, right? That's why there are a lot of techniques and strategies people use or teachers use. For example, reading clubs in which each person gives their interpretation of a message or the book, and they can mention the important things they consider. So, since they are sharing all this information, it can come up like with a better with a better understanding of the text, right? Because all of us have different points of view, and the reader also needs to take this information in the context of that person and give a meaning to that text. And this can happen only through the knowledge, the feelings or emotions, the experience, and the culture they have in the terms, or like related to what they're reading, right? So reading is not just about I'm sorry, I'm having technical problems. I hope it works better now. I don't remember like what I was saying specifically. Like I don't remember, or I don't know like when it stopped broadcasting. So I will try to restate my points and to continue working where I was. Right. All right. So I was telling you that all this culture is needed. All this information, like background information, is needed in order for you to be able to read. Okay, so there is a belief that says that skills in reading depend, like the skill in reading, this reading skill depends on the efficient interaction between linguistic knowledge and knowledge of the world. So that phrase summarizes everything, and it summarizes the point I was trying to share with you, right? Like in simple words, you develop this reading skill, or you can become like very good at reading just when you have this efficient interaction between linguistic knowledge, like grammar, syntax, etc., 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 and the world, the culture, right? The specific information that is the background topic of what you're reading. That's what you need to become a good reader. And also, that's what your students need to become excellent readers. All right, so we will start with a strategic reading, right? Right, and there's no like other or an easier definition to this than uh, than the belief of your students becoming in like an active element of reading. They need to choose what elements are important for them and how they can become good readers, like the strategies they can develop in order to become excellent readers. So they will read better if they are under a laissez-faire. I don't know if that's correctly pronounced because that's French atmosphere. But what does that mean? Uh, what does that mean? Well, laissez-faire, faire, that thing, refers to this environment in which their students feel free. There's no stress. There's not like anything that makes them feel anxious about anything. They just feel free to read, as it happens in real world. When you read, you enjoy it. You need to enjoy the time reading. So there also need to be like these rich surroundings in order for them to feel comfortable with reading. What do we need but these surroundings? Well, it's the information they need to understand, like keywords, the context of the book, who wrote it, who it is, like the intended audience, right? Because if you ask them to read a book that is like a special book for doctors, your students might not feel comfortable at all, and it's not going to be meaningful, and it's not going to be easy for them to understand the book or anything in it. So they need also a healthy dose of straight strategy based instruction. It means that you need to help them develop strategies and provide them with with the enough information, or with the information enough to organize the reading, to like to how could I say that, like to, yes, to organize the steps they are going to follow to read, right? It's not just reading for reading. It's like it is important to teach them that there are different stages that someone mentioned. I think it was Rosalba, the pre-reading, the while reading, and different stages. So they need to know, but they don't need to feel so stressed about that. And they also need to develop metacognitive strategies, right? Metacognitive, it refers to that they go beyond mind and beyond the skills like they have in their brain to be able to read. For example, schedule like their time to read, They also need to organize, for example, the place where they are so they feel more comfortable. They need a notebook to write the words down. They need a dictionary, like the different things they can do outside their brain in order to be like in order to read and to read without problems, right? So if you help them develop those two different environments, the laissez-faire and the strategy-based environment, like freedom but control at the same time, your students will become able to mix conscious and subconscious acquisition of reading and explicit and implicit learning of reading. And it's important. They need both, right? Remember, we can help our students acquire but learn at the same time. And we have talked about the difference between those important terms. And yes, for example, they need to know how to identify the main idea and the details, right? That's really, really important because they have different purposes, right? Understanding the main idea ensures in a way that you understood everything from the book, right? You got the most important thing, but the details also work when it comes to specific reading, like to read for specific information. And yeah, multiple strategies need to be developed. For example, in the pre-reading stage, while reading, post-reading, but also the follow-up strategies. Post-reading strategies could be, for example, write a summary, answer some questions, talk about what you read. But then there are some follow-up strategies that can be useful to know, like how much grammar your students got from the reading or how many words they got and they can actually use. And yeah, so we will see more about that later. Extensive reading is also an important thing to take into account. What do we mean by extensive reading? Is this reading we do for pleasure most of the times, but not necessarily. Like it could be academic reading also, but it takes longer than any kind of reading. When we read, for example, a small paragraph to answer some questions, that's actually reading, but extensive reading is a different process. Extensive reading is the key for students to gain in reading ability, right? It gives them linguistic competencies because they get more structures in use. They see how verbs work together. They see how comma, semicolon, and all those things see me now again. I'm going to finish with this slide, and I think I'm going to stop here because it's driving me crazy, and it cuts my